up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on Thursday, February 29th. Happy Leap Day, I guess. On this Thursday, the day before March, I was honestly surprised, Bryce. I didn't realize we had a 29th this year. I thought it was March 1st coming up. And you know what? I got to use my last crown boost. I thought I let it go too long, but I got to activate it today, which of course, I don't know about you guys, but you hit the activate on the crown boost, and you're like, I got to gamble on everything today. Get the 3x, the 4x crowns, increase the action. So been sweating golf out.
If you don't use that, like if you don't activate the boost, do you just lose it?
Yeah,
is that how it works?
Well,
yeah. I'm such a donkey. I don't think I've used it once. Now maybe once, but like
you get what 4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5 a month, depending on your level. And I always keep them to the end of the month, just in case some big day comes around where, I want to get in all the action, which, of course, this time of year, there's not that much going on. So I wait to the end of the month, and I thought I wasted one. But then I was pleasantly surprised, Bryce, to learn I had one more, in the chamber to use today. But, the basketball world rolls on. AP, I know you're sweating tennis over there. I've been sweating golf today. It's close to 70 degrees here in Denver. And to me, Bryce, I don't know if you agree with this, but basketball is kind of like a winter sport. And then when the playoff comes, it becomes a spring, summer sport. But these last month or two before you get to the playoffs, listen, DFS is the savior for it, right? But man, 82 NBA games is a long ass season. I know you're crushing it this year. Your thoughts just kind of heading into spring here. I guess we got the RPS party coming up, a fun time of year, but I feel like this about baseball, in August or right around when football comes around, and it's just kind of a long grind. Your thoughts here on NBA and this slate, I guess, in general.
I think the All-Star break kind of comes at the perfect time for me.
Yeah.
Just to switch over before baseball. I'm more of a basketball guy than baseball in general, just in terms of grinding. So, I'll be playing until the end of the season and throughout the playoffs and whatnot. But yeah, it feels good to get a break. February 29th comes around once every 4 years. So, it's kind of like if you lose money, you don't really lose it. It doesn't get realized until 4 years from now or whatever. So you can kind of do whatever you want today. In terms of the crown boosts, you kind of got to plan your play out a bit now, or just if you're playing more than you normally do, just click one and use them earlier rather than later. Don't have them all saved up like AP over there. Otherwise, you'll be firing too much money into the tennis streets on the last day of the month that you didn't even know was occurring.
Yeah, that's me. Firing too much in the golf streets because I knew my crown boost was activated today. And if you really add up the money from the crown boost, it's not significant, especially if you don't convert on the extra buy-ins. AP, I know the tennis is going well for you over there. I got to be honest, I've never even played DFS tennis, not one time. What's the secret? What's the AP recipes for more success in the tennis streets?
It's kind of right up your alley. It's, I think, in my opinion, very similar to MMA. But you get more upsets. These women's matches, are just there's outside of the top guys, there's upsets galore, and so you can take advantage of that because people don't like to play the stud and value. They like to really gravitate around towards this mid-tier build. So if you're willing to take some extra risk, I think there's a nice advantage in the tennis streets right now. We reformatted the playbook. Our lady Susie absolutely kills it in the tennis street. Her knowledge is just way up there. I absolutely love her takes. So if you're looking for another sport, and if you're a mid-size or small size DFS player, tennis is perfect. So they got the $15 flagship 10K up top each day, pretty much, and it's a good contest.
All right, that's tennis. We'll jump into basketball. At this point, we do have 6 games to talk about. We do have 2 early games in the 7 Eastern time window. The first one we'll go over is Milwaukee and Charlotte. Milwaukee favored by 12 on the road here in Charlotte. Maybe not surprisingly low if you've been following what Charlotte's kind of done with their defense over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but a 217 total in this one, Bryce, is kind of crazy. AP, I know you're into the betting NBA streets to some extent. I don't know if you saw, but like unders have hit, don't quote me on this, but it's like 65, 70%, I think, since the All-Star break. I don't know the reason for that. I just saw the number, but I'm reminded of it when you see a 217 total between Milwaukee and Charlotte. It kind of jumps off the page to me. I mean, what would this total have been, at the beginning of the year with LaMelo in there, like a 235 or 240? So it did stand out to me a little bit. LaMelo, of course, going to miss this game. So will Chris Middleton. And then Andre Jackson is really the only relevant player that we have a questionable tag on for either team here. He's questionable for the Bucks. We'll start with you, AP. Any idea what's going on with the under? Is it just a blip in the radar? And were you surprised to see the total as low as it is in this game? Obviously, go over all the DFS stuff as well.
Yeah, so like with NBA betting, historically, I've had some good success betting overs early on in the season. You just don't get a lot of defense. It's a lot of, fast-paced games, but there's a switch, and when that flips, and usually it's right after the All-Star break, teams start playing defense. Teams are positioning now, for the playoffs. I mean, we're not that think about it. March 8, and then halfway through April, and then we're right there at the end of the season. So it's here. It's like very, very close. So it's not surprising. I managing a lot of the DFS content has definitely taken time away from like evaluating and getting my NBA bets out there. So I was not aware that the unders were hitting that large of a clip, but I'm really not that surprised. The other thing too is I don't want to give Doc Rivers much credit, maybe if any at all, but defensively, I was reading some stats. He's starting to help this Bucks team. They've been much better defensively of late. I don't know if that's a function of who they're playing. They played a watered-down Philly team, a Hornets team that is just a mess. But their game against the Timberwolves, I think, was a good benchmark there. Right after the All-Star break, they went into Minnesota and got the win, held Minnesota to 107 points. Very, very difficult to do. I know, DC, we've been talking, and Ian Edwards is just, I mean, he's the man. He's legit, and this Timberwolves team is legit too. So I wouldn't if you're the Celtics, and I feel like this happens all the time, or at least the last few years, where it's just, they're riding high and they think they're going to get in there easy. But man, I would not count out a team like the Bucks just with how they're playing of late. So we'll see if they can get it going. These two teams just played. Milwaukee absolutely destroyed Charlotte. And it was, defensively, it was a couple things. Dame Lillard was on point. He got whatever he wanted. He only played 24 minutes, almost put up 50 DK points. I mean, he was lights out. Giannis only had to play, 24 minutes. He didn't really even need to do much. I've been very impressed with Bobby Portis off the bench. The problem is his minutes, but when he's out there, he's been a lot more aggressive. His usage has been insane. 5,500. I mean, man, large field tournament play only because he's playing anywhere from 18 to 22 minutes. And that's just too risky. But the upside is there with how aggressive he has been, and especially against a matchup against the Hornets. My take here, when I look at it, when I think about this last game, Miles Bridges played 36 minutes. He was a net negative 48. I mean, that's just horrendous. That is so bad. I think the Hornets found, I don't see them getting absolutely destroyed. I want to, do I feel confident about them keeping it close? No, but usually it seems like a team in this spot bounces back and fights a little bit. And you would think Miles Bridges would be a part of that. 8,200 in this matchup. I mean, a tough matchup, but still, it's a watered-down Hornets team, and his usage is insane when he's out there. Think about Jaren Jackson Jr. last night. If we go back a few slates ago, he was massive chalk and absolutely busted. And then you go to last night's slate, And Jaren Jackson Jr. was like, what, sub 5% owned or something like that, and smashed, absolutely smashed. It's a little bit different here with Miles Bridges, but man, when you take away the name and take away everything like that, and when you look at the numbers, the opportunity is going to be there. The usage rate is strong. And on this watered down team, I do see upside in a guy like Bridges. And I think if they want to keep in this one, it's got to be through him. It's got to be through, Grant Williams off the bench. And, Trey Mann needs to play better too. He started out hot. And then he's really cooled off a little bit, but I have a little bit of interest in this game. You go to Dame Lillard too. He's been awesome. I think the other thing too is since Giannis has kind of deferred a little bit, on the offensive end, he's been incredible defensively. I don't think that's something that's not talked about probably enough right now, like what he's doing on the because you don't see those stats out of, the side of steals and blocks, but he's been awesome. I think you can play a few of these pieces because if the game stays close, those guys on the Bucks side are absolutely going to crush.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, just looking at, it's game log watching to some extent, Bryce, but Charlotte in their last 3 games is averaging 88 points per game. They've scored 85 against Milwaukee a couple nights ago, 93 against Portland, 84 against the Warriors. It's just been ugly offensive basketball for the Hornets for a while now, which makes sense when you look at kind of who they've got available. So it's hard for me to get behind Charlotte on a decent-sized slate as big underdogs, and they're just not doing much offensively. So I think I'm a little more interested in the Milwaukee side of the ball here, but where do you see this one going, Bryce?
Game seems a little overbought to me. I kind of figured when I'd click on our ownership stuff, you see this game towards the bottom of the ownership, and it's just not. People are still trying to buy this game. I don't think one-off pieces are the worst here, but it's not a game I want to go super heavy at. I think Dame is probably my favorite play here. You saw him pop off against them the other night. Giannis can get whatever he wants against this team, even if Grant Williams is out there playing good defense. So, I think he always has to be in the pool. Favorite guy from the other side of the game is probably Brandon Miller here. Seems like a really, really cheap tag for him. I think the ownership on this game might be a product of more there's only 6 games and none of these games really stand out as the game you really want to target, injuries, pace wise. So, you have people just defaulting to their algorithms and whatnot. And these guys are popping in a couple. So I think it's just a all around type of situation. I'm not going to all out fade these guys or anything, but it's not a game I'm really trying to go at either. I don't hate Cody Martin for under 5K. I don't hate Grant Williams. I don't hate Trey Mann's even up there now at 5,400. And then Milwaukee side of the ball, it's pretty much all my exposure is going to be towards Dame and Giannis here.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm having trouble getting excited about this one as well, especially obviously on the Charlotte side. As I mentioned, we do have another fairly low total for a second game of the night. Also in that 7 Eastern time window, it is Utah at Orlando. Orlando favored by 6.5, 225 total in this one. Jonathan Isaac going to miss this game for the Magic. And then more importantly, Paulo Banchero is questionable to play. He missed, was it Tuesday's game, I believe? I think Tuesday's game with an illness. I think he's out with that same designation. Walker Kessler, questionable to play for the Jazz. Everybody else should be in there for Utah. As I said, 225 total AP in this one. What do you see between Utah and Orlando?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we're also getting to the tricky point of the season where you have some teams that are just completely out of it, and you're going to see some really funky things happen. You're going to see them lay down and absolutely be terrible some nights. You're going to see wonky rotations, and the Jazz are definitely that team. And then other nights, you're going to see them absolutely crush. I was surprised, against the Hawks. That game carried, the Jazz-Hawks game carried like a massive 240 something total, I believe. I don't remember the exact number, but final score is 84-107. And the game just played out sloppy. The rotation on the Jazz side was not friendly. I mean, when you look at it, no one on the Jazz side played even touched 30 minutes. Keontae George played the most at 28 minutes. So this rotation is a mess. And now you get a matchup against Orlando. They play slow. You rarely see, individual, you rarely see multiple plays like crush against this team for DFS purposes. I will say, like, point guards of late, some have had some success, which does have me a little bit interested in Keontae George. But if I'm being honest, I honestly think you could, fade the Jazz side here. And the one play I saw Taylor Hendricks kind of getting some ownership early. And, from a projection standpoint, I'd be cautious with a guy like that just because of this rotation. I mean, there's a real chance that he only plays what he play? He played 26 minutes last time. Like, would I be surprised if he played under 25 minutes? And in this matchup at 4.4K, I don't know. I think there's a high bust potential there. And then, John Collins should not be highly owned in this spot. And what was a great spot against his former team, he was terrible. He was horrendous. I don't trust it. So I'm going to be off the Jazz here. And the Orlando side, while some of these individual matchups are really great, power forwards against, players like Paolo against this Jazz team have put up some big numbers. I don't trust their rotation either. They have a wonky, wild rotation. I will say a couple things. Paolo, I'm interested in. Franz, with Paolo back, feels a little bit overpriced. Markelle Fultz running the second unit. He's not going to get you many minutes. But, man, the guy has upside running that second unit, and especially in a matchup like this one, getting Jordan Clarkson against Jordan Clarkson in the second unit. And if Walker Kessler's out too, I think that would help him when you think about Markelle Fultz's game. So I would have mild interest in that, but really you want to limit your amount of players that you're targeting here in this game.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Another kind of uninspiring game. You mentioned, Bryce, it's, a little bit of a hunting for value type of slate in general. There's not that much out there that's screaming, oh, they're going to put up a monster score based on their price and all that stuff. So I do mostly agree with AP. I'm not super excited about this game. I do think the Orlando side is better, partly depending on that Paulo news. But what do you see here, Jazz and Magic, Bryce?
I think if Paulo sits, this is definitely a spot I'm going to play Magic. Even with their super annoying rotations, both these teams have really annoying rotations for DFS. It's kind of centered around like Laurie on the Jazz side, and then like Franz and Paulo on the Magic side, and then kind of everyone else is like a second tier type of player. And then there's like a huge second tier of players that you can play. It's not the best game. It's a really paced down matchup for the Jazz. It's a good matchup for Orlando at home. However, with Paulo coming back, that means like he's been out. So the rest of the Jazz all kind of got a price bump today a bit. Like Fultz is one of the few ones that didn't. Pretty much all the starters did. So with Paulo back, and I'm assuming he's back, it makes me not like the game quite as much. Like I think you still want exposure to like Suggs. Paulo, if he plays, Franz, Wendell, Fultz would kind of be like my Magic exposure. And none of these guys are probably going to be buys for me today. I think pretty much everyone from this game will be a sell for me. Guy that stands out to me on the Jazz side, it's Laurie. He always seems to go under-owned. He's the one guy that really has minutes upside. And in this matchup, I think you need the minutes upside. Like, it's kind of hard to get there against the Magic playing reduced minutes. So they just play so slow. Like, if you're only going to come out here and play 28 minutes, that 28 minutes is probably like on the high end of like what you'll actually produce at, because they play at such a snail's pace, even if the Jazz want to play fast. So more one-offs for me in this game. Not really my favorite situation. We'll get to some of these better games. I don't mind that Fultz call at all. He's someone that nobody's going to play, and we really want some studs later on, especially in the San Antonio game. So kind of like the first game to me.
We got
it is one of those points where the games kind of seem to get progressively better as we move along.
We got the dog in favor of Markelle Fultz too, right? Isn't that a good sign?
Mateo?
Yeah, there we go, Mateo.
My fiance just walked in the door, so he's all excited now. But you hear him in the background now. Yeah, he's a huge Fultz fan.
All right, Mateo in on Markelle Fultz of the Magic there. Next game on the slate, Atlanta and Brooklyn. And man, speaking of a team that's kind of bottomed out offensively and otherwise, the Brooklyn Nets have scored fewer than 100 points in 4 of their last 5. 81, they did score 111 against Memphis, but then 86 against Minnesota, 93 against Toronto, 86 against Boston. Has been some tougher matchups, so maybe something of a get-right game here. AP for the Nets. They are favored in this one. 1-point favorites over the Atlanta Hawks, 221 total. Obviously, the Hawks going to be without Trae Young for, what is it, a month or so, something like that for Trae Young. So their team has changed. We'll see DeJounte Murray busted kind of last time out as shock, but not a true bust, I guess. But another pretty decent spot for him. And then I love centers against Atlanta, but Claxton has just not been getting the job done. He makes me nervous at 6,400. And another game, I mean, 221 is a really, really low total from what we're used to with the Atlanta Hawks. So I don't know. It's kind of tough to go here. We'll see with Ben Simmons. He's questionable. Cam Thomas has been ruled out for Brooklyn. Talking to AP, the Hawks and the Nets here.
Yeah, so if you believe that the Hawks game against the Jazz was kind of an outlier, which I do. This Hawks team has not been good defensively all season long. They were much better in that game. But again, like that was a 1-game sample. The Nets here, this should be a good spot to get back to the Nets. This total definitely, I mean, the totals do that, but still it's, the game is starting to change a little bit. Teams are playing defense. So it becomes tougher to touch these numbers, even on both sides too. Like a 223 total in a Hawks game. I guess no Trae Young, so that helps out quite a bit, as far as like the unders go. But when you look at this and you look at the Nets just played the Magic, got absolutely blown out. But when you look at the rotation, the opportunity was definitely there. I think Cameron Johnson is going to be a phenomenal play today. With Cam Thomas out, just think about what that does. It really impacts scoring, and that's why you're seeing such a low total. But Cam is just an offensive, beast, and so that is one thing that they're lacking. Cameron Johnson is a guy that can step up. Now he's coming off a game where he struggled to find his shot. I really respect his game. I think he's a good player, and I don't think you're going to see him go back to back. A long stretch where he's not hitting his shots. So 4,900, he's definitely a value that I could make a stand on. And I liked his rotation. That's been one of the more significant risks throughout the year with a guy like Cameron Johnson. He just hasn't been getting the minutes. He played 29 in a blowout. Like his rotation was extremely friendly. And I would say also for like Nick Claxton, Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Dennis Schroeder as well. They all had really nice rotations, all of which it looks like would have played almost 30-plus minutes had the game stayed close, but it didn't. Maybe not Dorian Finney-Smith. He's the one guy that may have been left out. The other guy, too, to keep an eye on is Lonnie Walker, man. Talking about scoring, this is one guy that will come in off the bench with a load of confidence. Just think about his game back like last year with the Lakers. He would come in and he would provide a spark. We've seen moments of that throughout this year. I like him here. I think 3,900, you can play him at the shooting guard, small forward spot. When you look at his rotation, it's going to be hit or miss because it really depends. Is he hot? Is he hitting the shots? If he is, he tends to get more minutes. If he doesn't, they tend to go with, more of Dorian Finney-Smith. So Lonnie Walker, definitely a guy that I have some interest with. And so I like the Nets side here. They're at home. I think they keep this game close, maybe steal a win. Vegas thinks so too. And I definitely think we see some fire on the Nets side. The Hawks, the Hawks without Trey, fairly predictable rotation here. Their pricing is insane. So I was heavy on Jalen Johnson against Utah, which again was just the nut matchup. Speaking of that, Paulo's in that same matchup today. So thinking back to that game, I'm probably going to be playing some Paulo because Jalen Johnson put up a monster number. DeJounte Murray was fine. But again, like 9,400, Nets playing a little bit better. A slower paced game here. It comes down to, can you pay that price tag for him? There's a lot of other options in the range: Jalen Brunson, Stephen Curry, and then a little bit lower than him, Damian Lillard. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. Obviously, DeJounte Murray can get it done, especially with Trey off the court. We all know what he's capable of doing. I won't be going back to Jalen Johnson. 8,100, man, the price tag is just massive. And then Clint Capella, you can play bigs against this Nets team. And Capella got, I believe, just under 25 minutes last game. So he's closer to returning back to that normal rotation.
All right, let's go to you. Third and strong. What do you see? Atlanta and Brooklyn.
I think AP brings up some really great points here about the game log watchers for Brooklyn. Like, a lot of people just click on Brooklyn's last game log, not realize it's a blowout without Cam Thomas, and his 30 shots a game or whatever he puts up, and just see like, oh, these guys are only playing like mid-20s. They must have spread his minutes out. No, it was pretty condensed, like the rotation. So I actually think the Nets are a pretty good shot here. You get really cheap prices on a lot of them, like Lonnie Walker's 3.9K. Schroeder's only 5.2. Cameron Johnson's under 5K at 4.9. So I think those are some of your better salary savers on the slate. Talk with Tony about this a lot, but I kind of question Miles or Mikal Bridges' upside in pretty much any matchup. He just always seems to be like the consistent guy that'll get you like 35 or 40. Never really put up like the game defining score that you're looking for in GPP. So I'd rather be over on the other three guys. I'm still going to play some Bridges today just because it's such a nutty matchup and spot for him, but not as much interest in him as some of the other guys. On the Atlanta side of the ball, you see these guys pretty much at max price all across the board without Trae Young. I think the one spot I'd really want to buy here is Murray. I've been over on Murray every game after Trae, and whenever Trae's out this year, I've been over on Murray, and it's been a profitable experience. I think it's a little bit better to play on FanDuel. Highlight that he's only 8.8K there, fits both guard spots, and he's a really good stock player for a guard, which really does matter more on FanDuel. You don't really get a lot of guys with stock upside at the guard spot. So I think he's one of the few ones that really does have that. So that just makes me like him a little more over there, 600 cheaper and, a better scoring system for him. Love that chat was picking up on some of Mateo's plays. I just manually put in more Fultz, not tons more, but we gave him a little projection bump on the Mateo news. So that was nice. But yeah, one of the games I like more than the first two.
Yeah, makes sense. I love the Mateo Fultz call. I might have to jump on that one myself as well. That's Atlanta and Brooklyn. We'll get to next game on the slate. It is the other game in the 7:30 Eastern time window, Golden State and the New York Knicks. The Warriors are road favorites here, 4.5-point favorites, 221 total, so another modest total in this one. Andrew Wiggins going to be out for the Warriors with personal reasons, and then Jalen Brunson is the questionable player, obviously the key cog in their offense, especially with Julius Randle and OG Anunoby remaining out. We saw Miles McBride fill in that starting role last game. He played 40 minutes, fairly modest fantasy total, but the minutes opportunity was certainly there. Josh Hart kind of took over a little bit of that playmaker role. He's been on a roll, and I think would be an interesting play if Jalen Brunson does indeed miss again. So, yeah, obviously AP a ton here depends on the Brunson news, but overall I think a pretty interesting game. Warriors obviously surging a little bit here down the stretch. What do you see between the Warriors and the Knicks?
Yeah, so, man, it seems like the Knicks are playing like every night, and Thibs just runs these dudes into the ground. I think it's, 5 games and 7 nights, I believe, is like the stretch that they're on. It's something ridiculous like that. And I mean, when you look at it and when you look at their last few matchups, the matchup obviously against Detroit, really good one. Pelicans, a tougher matchup, and it showed. It seemed like the tired legs showed a little bit as well. So hopefully, they get a little bit of help with Hartenstein back, but I don't know if I don't think he's back to full minutes yet when he's in there. So I think Precious in this matchup against a faster pace Warriors team is someone that I have mild interest in. Josh Hart has been incredible in this role, and he just plays 40 minutes a night. And I think you can definitely go there. And then it comes down to Brunson. I mean, if Brunson's out, we go right back to Miles McBride. We already know what the role is going to be. Like Tibbs, he showed us hand. It's 40 minutes, over 40 minutes. So I would highly suspect that if Brunson was out, that Miles McBride would play 38 plus minutes. So I think that's quite telling. So if Jalen Brunson's in, I'm going to leave him in my player pool just because he has that GPP upside, especially in this matchup. But again, he takes away from everyone else as well. So I would have less interest in some of the Knicks' peripheral pieces just because he has so much touch time. The ball is in his hands all the time. And then the Warriors, their rotation right now is it's definitely interesting. Moses Moody got inserted into the starting lineup, played 22 minutes last game. 22 minutes against the Warriors is much different than 22 minutes against this Knicks team, especially a Knicks team that doesn't play with a lot of pace. So I would have less interest in him. And then you got Chris Paul that came off the bench and played 21 minutes. What Chris Paul does, he takes away a lot from Draymond Green. So that was something I overlooked. I love Draymond Green in that matchup against the Wizards, but I neglected to account for the impact that Chris Paul would have on that matchup. And so right now it's a mess, man. Like that game against Washington stayed relatively close. No Warriors player played over 30 minutes. So I see a ton of risk on the Warriors side. And I honestly don't think that you really need to play anyone, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense to me. Not that interested in the Warriors, Bryce, but the Knicks side of the ball, if Brunson misses, I mean, I think I want McBride. I kind of think I want Josh Hart. I think Achua, DiVincenzo are all in play. Just like I mean, AP nailed it. These guys have played so many minutes, so many games. But like, I don't think Tibbs cares. He's just going to run them out there for 40 minutes again, right? And they are at home. They aren't on a back-to-back here. So, yeah, I have not that much interest in the Knicks if Brunson plays. But if he's out, I think all these guys are pretty interesting. What are your thoughts here, Bryce? Knicks and Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, Tibbs has been doing this shit for 2 decades, and
right.
he's going to continue to run the guys into the ground. There's a pretty large sample size of him doing the same thing year after year, and it's caused issues everywhere else he's been. I know New York loves winners, and he'll give you some more regular season winners, but it's going to cost you in the playoffs when these guys have tired legs and everyone else has fresh legs. It's a story as old as time with where he's gone. So, I think if Brunson's healthy enough, he's going to go out there and play. If Brunson plays, I really don't like this game at all. I'd probably play him in like Steph. I think would be like my 2 favorite plays. After them would be like Precious. I think his role is a little less dependent on Brunson than the rest of them. Miles McBride, I walked last time at 4K. You get a Tibbs starter for 4K that when they have no other guards, he's going to play in 40 minutes. So I don't know if he'd be quite as much as a lock at 5K, but against the Warriors team, I don't really see many paths to Tibbs not playing Miles like 40 minutes. And he didn't even have a good game last time, and he got there. So I keep an eye out for that news. I'm tentatively expecting Brunson to play, but I'm ready to pivot to McBride, DiVincenzo, Hart if he's out. And, these guys are priced up from last time. So, I think they're kind of a tough buy, like priced up to where they're at. If Brunson is in, if Brunson's out, they're obviously good plays. Moving over to the Warriors side of the ball, AP broke it down well. The rotation's an absolute mess. You get like Curry in the Garden, could go there as like a weird spend up. I don't think anyone's going to play Steph. Like, it doesn't take a lot to get over on him. But the rest of these guys are all going to play around 30 minutes, and I'm going to keep them in the pool just because like it's not a great matchup, but they're all good shooters and can get hot. Like, I think the chance of one of them breaking the slate is still there, but it's kind of hard to pick and choose from the rotation. So like, if you want to do a rule of like max 2 Warriors or like even max 1 Warrior, if you want to be like super aggressive and like still keep some exposure, I think that's a decent way to cover their side of the ball.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think just so much of that game obviously depends on the Brunson news. So may or may not have that in the first game slot. Hopefully we'll have more information on that. Obviously the Up to Lock guys, which will come up after the show at the top of the hour, will break down all the news that you need to hopefully make some winning DFS lineups tonight. We did these last 2 games. First one, I think arguably the best game environment of the night. OKC, San Antonio Spurs, really fun matchup between these 2 teams. Obviously, OKC, one of the better stories in the league, currently essentially the dead heat with the Wolves for the number 1 seed in the West. Playing awesome ball all year long. I think they're legit. Like the time arrived faster maybe for OKC than people anticipated with Jalen Williams playing so well. Chet Holmgren has been awesome this year. We know what SGA can do. So yeah, OKC been awesome to watch. And then on the other side, you've got, of course, Victor Wembanyama, who interestingly AP got up to 34 minutes last game against the Wolves. It wasn't an overtime game or anything like that. They just kind of let him go, and they've been saying they're more willing to do so. He's been really good in this matchup on a per-minute basis. I mean, he's always good on a per-minute basis, but, yeah, he's been putting up numbers against OKC. I think he's interesting. He is up to 10.1K, which is, I think, about as high or maybe as high as it's been the entire year. But still, I can't deny the upside Wembanyama brings to the table. Kind of Wembanyama or bust for me with the Spurs. And then the OKC side, I think, is interesting from a lot of different angles. Williams, Holmgren, SGA, I think are all pretty interesting plays in this matchup. OKC favored by 11. And finally, a reasonably high total here, sitting at 238. We'll go to you first again, AP, OKC, San Antonio. What do you see?
So I think this game is like, man, one, I agree with you 100%, best game environment or projected game environment. The other thing, too, before I get into it, these teams recently played, well, back in late January on the 24th here in San Antonio, 140 to 114. OKC absolutely destroyed them. Wemby, 55 DK points, 27 minutes. I mean, that's what Wemby does very well. Devin Vassell actually had a good game against them as well. Their rotation was a mess. Obviously, it was a blowout, but even prior to the game blowing out, the rotation, Branham was getting minutes. Zach Collins, Chetty Osman, Doug McDermott, Blake Wesley was in there getting run. Like, the rotation on the Spurs side was just absolutely atrocious. Recently, and now this makes like no sense because it's like, and maybe it's San Antonio is just trying to figure out what they have. I've seen them tightening up the rotations. We saw that against the Spurs. Devin Vassell, playing just under 40 minutes. Pretty insane. Keldon Johnson coming off the bench, out of the doghouse, and played starter-like minutes. And then Wemby, finally 34 minutes. I could see this being like a game, kind of like a benchmark. The Spurs have really nothing to play for, but you have this OKC team that is the up-and-coming team that's very, very good, that is a team that I would not want to face early in the playoffs. There's 2 teams. I wouldn't want to face the Nuggets, the Wolves, and then, OKC. Definitely wouldn't want to face any of those teams, but especially OKC if you were like a high-seeded team. But, man, I think this is going to be like a benchmark type of spot for the Spurs, or at least I'm thinking that will be the case. So 10-1 for Wemby. I'm considering core play tagging him. I want to be extremely overweight. If he's playing 34-plus minutes, his price tag needs to be way higher. It just does for the upside that he has. I mean, this is a guy that I tweeted out that one game. It was like in 9 minutes, put up 41 DK points. Like absolutely insane. Like we just have not seen. I mean, maybe Giannis has had some performances like that. I think Boogie Cousins might have had some like insane performances like that, like a long, long time ago. But what Wemby's doing is insane. I love this matchup. I think he's going to be a great play. I also like a little bit Devin Vassell, 7,100, but he's just playing such big minutes right now. I think he's fine. And then Keldon Johnson off the bench. Man, that again, this is a hit or miss play. He could get benched like he did 2 games ago and never see the court again if he makes a mistake. Pop can do that, but he showed his upside when he's out there. I like if he's staggered and he's not in the court with Wemby at the same time. I would prefer that, but it's more so the price tag and positional flexibility playing him at the small forward and power forward position. So for me on the Spurs side, I would throw Trey Jones in there as well, but then it's Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama, and Keldon Johnson off the bench. And then OKC, like their rotation, again, really tough, but we know who the key pieces are. Shea, he should definitely be in your consideration. I would play Wemby over him, though, now, if we think those minutes are very firm. Jalen Williams, my second favorite guy. Chet, I think he is fine. And then, Josh Giddey and then everyone else, it becomes an absolute disaster. They like Isaiah Joe. They like Cason Wallace. They now have Gordon Hayward in there. Like those are the guys that are all very risky. So you want to be careful with some of the secondary pieces for OKC.
Yeah, for sure. I think with OKC, I'm mostly sticking with their primary, their big three, if you want to call it that. The Spurs situation is interesting. I do think AP brings up a good point with Keldon Johnson. Yeah, just bench, played 4 minutes against Utah. But the fact that he bounced back with 34 minutes the very next game, third and long, like I think it's by far the most likely thing, right? They show faith in him on the next game back. Like if you bench a guy like that, like 2 times in 3 games, you got a more serious problem on your hands. So I would be surprised if that happened to Keldon Johnson here. I think he's pretty interesting coming off the bench at 4,900. But what are your thoughts here, Bryce, on OKC and San Antonio?
These are teams I've been over on all year. And, the Spurs are obviously not making the playoffs. There hadn't really been like a big showcase Wemby game. But, if there's anyone that's going to take Rookie of the Year from them, and there isn't, it'd be like Chet. So, like, I could see this as a spot where Pop, like, kind of lets them go a bit. Let the young guys get after it as much as they can. I think that extends to Keldon Johnson on the bench too. Like, I mean, you see the 4 minutes, and obviously there's risk, but think of his upside. If he plays 35 minutes, you're getting a 7K player for 4,900. He's a 7K player when he's on the court, and that he was 7K the entire year before he took this bench role. So, you're essentially paying 2K less for a lot more up or variability in his range of outcomes. Like, he's definitely not a cash play, but I definitely like him coming off the bench. Wemby's probably my favorite play of the slate. I really like him on FanDuel too. I think he's going to be fairly chalky on DraftKings, but priced up to 11.6 on FanDuel, he kind of needs that 8-stock game. Mateo likes Wemby as well to get there, and I think he can get there here. OKC side of the ball, to me, it's kind of the big three, like you said. It's like SGA and then Chet and Jalen, and then kind of everyone else. I don't see myself really playing tons of these 3K OKC crappers here. It's a really solid matchup, and one of them can get there, but you're kind of picking at straws here. There's a lot of guys they can play in this backcourt, and they're all like super low usage guys. They're more type of guys I'd play on like a two game slate or like a showdown slate than like a 6-gamer. Like, give me the Nets value over these guys all day.
Yeah,
and I think I missed Devin.
If you're sweating your team, there is like you shouldn't make lineup decisions this way. But I love watching Wembanyama play, and just knowing you can put up 40 fantasy points in 10 minutes. The upside's always there. Man, I just can't get enough of just watching him play, and I can't wait to see what he's doing 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Like, assuming he stays healthy, it's going to be what's it going to cost on DraftKings 4 years from now if he stays healthy. Like 13,000 or like I don't know. I think fantasy-wise, I just think the sky's the absolute limit for him. So excited to see Wemby develop. Last game of the night with the plays of the day after this, assuming we get the lights up a little bit. We've got Houston and the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix favored by 8.5 in this one. Pretty decent total, sitting at 231. Tari Eason going to miss another game for Houston. And then Jalen Green is the big question mark. Currently questionable to play in this one. Phoenix will they'll get Nurkic back, but they do have Gordon and Bradley Beal both questionable, which obviously would open up more shots and opportunity for Booker, Durant, Grayson Allens of the world. We'll go back to you, AP, again. Houston and Phoenix. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I believe it is Jalen Green, so questionable with an illness, and we know that the illness going around is just absolutely nasty. So if he misses, Amen Thompson has been playing really well. 5,900, he would take over that Jalen Green role. Cam Whitmore too has been a guy that we've gone to as well. He's been a really nice piece off the bench. Fred VanVleet, 6,600, definitely feels a little too cheap. I think he's going to be a really nice play. Minutes should be good. If Jalen Green's out and more Amen Thompson, I think that benefits. Fred VanVleet just a little bit. We know Jalen Green needs the ball, likes to take a lot of shots, and again, like when Jalen Green's on, you want him taking shots. So I would have a little bit more interest there in Fred VanVleet. The rest of like Dylan Brooks and I mean, God, like I think he's fine. I'm not like running to get this guy into my lineups. He's a defensive guy. He's a 3-and-D guy, not really good at hitting threes. So yeah, I think I'm going to try to find some better value than Dylan Brooks. And then I think Jabari Smith, he's been balling out too. I mean, the numbers that he's putting up. 42 last game against the Rockets, or they played the Rockets back to back. I think he had 52 the day before, or the game before that. Like Jabari Smith has been playing some great basketball. I don't like this matchup, there against Kevin Durant and this Suns team. 6,800, the price tag is way up there. If you think he continues, then yeah, you can play him. But I do feel like it's a little bit of a chase here. So for me, it's mainly Fred VanVleet. And then Amen Thompson if Jalen Green is out. And then on the Suns side, Bradley Beal, questionable. They definitely need Bradley Beal to get healthy. I mean, when he's in there, the team, surprisingly, I mean, not surprisingly, but the Suns are just that much better. But man, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, both playing tons and tons of minutes. They're priced appropriately though. So definitely difficult to play them. How I've been handling the Suns is I've just been setting a group rule, Devin Booker or Kevin Durant, or if Beal is in there, I say one max out of the big three. That's kind of how I've been handling this situation. If you think Yusuf Nurkic plays more minutes to match up against Şengün, I think he at 6,600, I think that's going to be a fine play as well. Seems like a fair price tag for him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, bro, it's kind of hard to ignore Fred VanVleet here, especially if Jalen Green is out. We've seen guards torch Phoenix all year long. It makes sense when the starting backcourt is Devin Booker and Grayson Allen, right? They're just not going to be very good defensively. So I do like Fred VanVleet. I'm kind of with AP, the Jabari Smith. I mean, 3 really big games in a row, but kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. I'm not sure how much I trust that, especially in this particular matchup. But go ahead, your thoughts here on Houston and Phoenix Suns.
I think this is the game that could go a little overlooked on the slate that has like a lot of upside. Like you have Bradley Beal potentially back. I assume even if he's back, he's going to play a pretty heavy minutes limit here. Like I don't think that kills like Booker or Durant. Like it obviously hurts them a bit, but no one's going to play them if Beal's back in. And I'd be more worried about playing the guy like Grayson Allen than one of the studs here. So I kind of like the Phoenix studs. Bol has been absolutely crushing it. If he sees the minutes that he's been seeing, he's too cheap at 3,900. He's like a value play that like doesn't grade out great on paper just because like you're not projecting him for a ton of minutes. But Go project him for like 22 minutes and see how well he grades out because it's pretty good. So yeah, it's kind of like the Phoenix studs and Bowl for me. And then on the Houston side of the ball, I completely agree on Fred VanVleet. He's simply too cheap here. Sengun's a guy I'm always over on. It's a little tougher matchup for big men than guards against Phoenix, but he kind of plays the role of a guard as well. So, it's kind of harder to model like passing big men against a lot of these teams. Like, I don't know. You saw last night Jaren Jackson in like a really tough matchup against Gobert. It's not as tough if you're just going to stand at the 3-point line and shoot threes. It's not like Gobert's going to guard that. So,
sure.
Context matters in these situations, and I think there's some validity with Sengun here. So it's kind of like VanVleet, Sengun, Smith, and then I'm really only interested in these Houston secondary pieces. If Jalen Green's out, I'm going to be over on. I know Dylan Brooks is an ugly play, but I'll be over on him. I'll be over on Amen Thompson. I'll be over on Whitmore, and I'll be over on Aaron Holden. So that's kind of the plan here. It is the late game, so there's a chance that you won't know before the OKC San Antonio game. I'm assuming that you do. So, I'm kind of building as if like I have the news, and then between 7:30 and 8:30, I can kind of refine my teams for the late game.
I like that, kind of building for the Jalen Green being out. And then, like, even worst case, if you're stuck with some of those guys on Houston, like, they're reasonable plays, right? You're not totally drawn dead. And if Jalen Green is out, I think you put yourself in a pretty good spot. So I like that call from Bryce on the potential Jalen Green absence for the Houston Rockets. All right, that's all 6 games. Let's get to our plays of the day. We'll go to you first, AP, for your gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go to this Nets game. And Cameron Johnson, it's just, that fact that no Cam Thomas, that's just a massive hole offensively for this Nets team. Good matchup here against Atlanta. I think Cameron Johnson finds his shot. And when he's on, and if that rotation holds true, factoring in a non-blowout, he should be pushing like 33, 34 minutes, and he could put up a big number for his price tag at 4,900 over on DraftKings. Cameron Johnson, my play of the day.
Cameron Johnson from AP. We'll go to you, Bryce, your play of the day today.
Victor Wembanyama. He's been my play of the day a couple times.
I love that. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I love it.
If he's underpriced and underowned every slate. So I'm going to keep going back to the well until it's broken. Mateo agreed with me. He was all over the Wemby pick. I think it's a place where it's pretty easy to showcase him against, Chet would probably be like considered his biggest like rival. So if Pop's ever going to extend his minutes, I kind of think it's here.
Love the Victor Wembanyama call from Bryce. I'll go to the Knicks. This one is partially dependent on Jalen Brunson's absence. Might move off it if Brunson's in, but if Brunson is out, I love Josh Hart here. He's played 40-plus minutes in 4 straight games. The matchup against the Warriors is actually pretty good now that Draymond has moved to center. So I like the matchup for Josh Hart there. Last game with Brunson out, he had 16 potential assists. So is pretty much acting as a de facto playmaker, lead, kind of point forward for the Knicks, which wouldn't be the case necessarily if Brunson is in, but plenty of good action after the Knicks game if you do need to pivot off Josh Hart if Brunson is in there. But absolutely love Hart if Brunson is out. All right, we'll wrap it up a little bit early today. We do, of course, have the Up to Lock show coming up here in about 10 minutes. And if you do want to join RPS, get in the Discord. We got baseball, golf, MMA, and, of course, NBA, college basketball. And what do we have? NASCAR is in full swing. Tennis from AP. Tennis. So plenty of stuff to get action on over at Run Pure Sports. You can use promo code RPS15 to get you 15% off your first monthly or weekly payment. That will do it for us. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow for AP for Third and Schlong. I am Draft Sheet, and we're out of here.